Hello and welcome. My name is Tom. This is the Enthusiasm Project, Season 10, Episode 10. This is the end, my friends. The season finale of Episode 10. We did it. Yay. Okay, well, goodbye, everybody. I'll see you later. No, I'm just kidding. For this final episode of Season 10, since there sort of emerged like a journey that I didn't necessarily expect to go on when I started the season several months ago, I thought it would be kind of cool to sort of look back at that and try to summarize it and sort of wrap it up in some way that forms some sort of conclusion, like a retrospective in a way. So that's what we'll be talking about today to wrap things up. And I hope that's helpful and interesting, of course. Quickly, though, to talk about gear, there's not much. Literally nothing has changed since last week. I kind of really liked the results that I got, and I just didn't feel like plugging. I don't know what that little laugh was, but I felt like just not really plugging in anything else or changing anything else. So I'm still on the Shure SM7B, running directly into the Rodecaster Pro 2, and I've got my SM7B preset, which I found on the... I made with the help of a video from a YouTube channel called Home Studio Pro with Brody Brazil, where he kind of went through and dialed in every setting on the SM7B. Talked about this a little bit last week, but it's really been one of the first times that I've been genuinely happy and excited with the SM7B on the Rodecaster Pro 2. There's more than enough gain and stuff, but I just couldn't dial it in a way that I liked with my voice. So this has been listening to it with that preset, and if I turned it off, this is what it would sound like. This is the SM7B running dry into the Rodecaster Pro 2. This is what that sounds like. And now I can turn back on all of that processing. And it really helps bring the mic to life. I've really had to learn with a lot of mics, not just the SM7B, that EQ doesn't mean that there's a problem with the mic or the processing. A lot of times it really is just a part of the workflow, and it can take something that sounds good and make it sound great. And it doesn't mean that there's a shortcoming with the equipment or the setup or anything. EQ is just part of the process. Like editing a video. Like, it doesn't mean that you failed because you didn't do a perfect one take and now you have to edit a video. It's okay to add EQ. It doesn't mean that anything's wrong or that anything failed. So that's the gear that I'm using. Nothing new there compared to last week. So let's jump in and just let's get this show on the road. So this past season, ended up, like I said, coinciding with a lot of personal reflection in regards to creativity, YouTube, work-life balance, perspective, all of that stuff, which I didn't really expect. And it was great, though. The way that it lined up was just so perfect because it ended up allowing me to essentially try and share it in real time. Everything I was thinking, everything I was going through, like realizations I was having. And I think I really love that, honestly. It's like a really cool personal diary for me. But where things are right now, and as I was thinking about last week's episode and last couple of episodes, I almost feel like there's a loose thread or there's a loose end that needs to be tied up. Not that there's like a firm conclusion or like, I fixed the whole problem and figured it all out, but just in a way of making it sort of all lead up to something. So I think it's probably good for me just as a person, but also anyone who's listening if I try to sum things up and share a conclusion to that journey. But of course, it's an ongoing, never-ending journey or evolution. So before we do that, let's kind of recap what happened here. Ultimately, a lot of it stemmed from me feeling like I was not in control of what I was creating and what I was making, which is primarily my YouTube channel. The podcast is not a source of stress at all because it's almost a side project. Basically, it's a very low stakes, low stress thing, and that's by design. I don't want it to be. I've played around with the sponsorship thing. I've done all that. I like this being my other thing on the side. That I don't know. It's like low stakes, but it doesn't mean I don't care about it. It just means that there's not like, oh my God, the podcast needs to perform at a certain level or we can't pay our mortgage. Like, that is not a thing that is happening. And I really love just kind of being able to share things in real time over how long has it been? 4.5 years I've been doing this show. It's been great to develop a really cool relationship with the community of people that listen. Obviously, like, not everybody who listens reaches out or says anything, but there's definitely a core group of people who have helped me to better understand what I'm doing and to feel like this is something that's really worthwhile to do. It feels good to me to create a podcast and get things out and have a chance to explore thoughts in depth in a way that I guess just putting a microphone in front of your face like contextualizes things a little differently than just like sitting on the couch and thinking does. Maybe it forces you to be a little more concise or have maybe more of a purpose, which can sometimes, I think, lead to conclusions and lead to realizations in a really neat way. So it's kind of like free therapy a lot of times, and that is pretty cool. But the YouTube channel was a thing. As much as I love it, it was, I mean, the way Heather put it was perfect. And if you go back and listen to those episodes, if you remember them, essentially what she had said was, you've put together this YouTube channel. In order to do that, and in order to make it work and to keep being able to create videos for it and have it, the intention was not that it would become my job when I started the channel, but it did, which is an amazing opportunity. And for that to happen and for that to keep going, I basically had to build this system, which was almost like a machine where, it was pretty finely tuned and a well-oiled machine, and you could put in certain things and then output would be, here's a video on time for the next week, and it just sort of runs incredibly smoothly. And that really served me very well and worked really well. But after a number of years of doing that, not just like a few months or a few weeks, but years upon years, hundreds of videos, it really did kind of get time to reevaluate that. And the analogy I used, which I thought was a pretty effective one, was when you plant a tree. Sometimes, if it's a small, like thin little tree, you'll need to have those supports that go with it, right? Like it's like a stick that's in the ground next to the tree trunk. And sometimes, depending on the situation, there might be like multiple, like 3 or 4 of those sticks that are like holding up a tree and keeping it in place so that it stays upright and it grows, straight and strong and everything. And I feel like that was sort of the machine that I had built, were those supports. And then the channel was the tree. And I needed those there because it wouldn't have been able to stand on its own without that whole system in place. But at a certain point, if you've ever seen a giant tree that just has this little toothpick next to it that's clearly not holding it up or helping in any way, but nobody's ever taken it down, and now it's just kind of in the way and sort of weird, I kind of thought maybe that's sort of what happened. Maybe we can take away some of these supports, see how the tree stands on its own, and then if we need to, we can add them back in with very clear purpose for a very clear reason. And it was that sounds like such an easy thing to realize and such a like, of course, this is how it was. But obviously, if you listen to those episodes, that was a sort of difficult realization to come to. And a big part of it came from what I ended up calling a sabbatical, or since I listened to a lot of ska music, a ska-batical, which was, again, Heather's idea that I was very, very resistant to at first, which was to take time off, to take a couple of weeks literally off and not make anything, not only not make anything, but just get away from everything and don't check any numbers. Going from, having not only checked in on my YouTube channel's analytics and numbers every day for 6 years, more than 6 years, but realistically 20 to 30 times a day, probably, every time you pull out your phone, every time you're on open the computer, just check and make sure, see how things are. What are the numbers? Where's this at? Check this comment, that kind of thing. To go from 20 to 30 times a day, every day for 6 years, to literally nothing for several weeks was kind of a drastic move. And it ended up really being for the best, as crazy and difficult it was. And it helped me contextualize things and gave me a really great appreciation for what I do and kind of a renewed purpose in what I want to do and what I do want to be influenced by, which is like my own creativity and, the people who I really like. There's sort of a core group that I want to serve, and I figure if they're being helped out, then other people are probably being helped as well. But I didn't want to feel like I was losing control. And that's kind of, I had felt a bit like I was putting myself in the passenger seat of the stuff that I was making and of my own channel. And that's for a lot of reasons. It's everything from just thinking like, here's a bunch of topics that I want to make. What's the most timely and relevant, which sounds like it makes sense. But at a certain point, the stuff I really wanted to make, or the ideas, were just kind of continuing to go on the back burner because it's like, oh, this needs to go up, or this would make more sense, or people have asked for this, or, even if there's no specific deal with a brand or anything, just my own Catholic guilt upbringing is like, well, geez, I shouldn't just ignore this thing or not talk about it. it just got a little bit difficult and a little bit crazy in a way that I didn't realize. And so stepping back and remembering like, no, this is my thing. And also all of these other things that I've built, all of those supports for this tree were things that were taking up a lot of time and a lot of energy and a lot of mental just exertion. And maybe I didn't need to participate in all of that. Maybe I didn't need to, everything from essentially being 24/7 tech support via email to, trying to hit very specific upload dates and times for years on end, all of that stuff. Maybe I didn't need to do it that way anymore. And that was kind of, what we've gone over through this season. And I really loved it. Like there's no regrets at all as far as that goes. But as we've talked about in the last couple of episodes, so last week, was the idea of respecting your work, which went into each thing that you create, or at least the way I view it, each thing I create being something that's worth spending a lot of time considering it and looking at it on its own. And what does it need to be successful? What does successful even mean? And then before that, the episode before that was where I talked about, for the first time, not adhering to a weekly upload schedule to go. And as I'm recording this is the first time ever that I've gone more than a week on my channel without uploading a video, which I know might not sound like a big deal, but it has made me a little bit nervous. I feel okay. I'm doing okay, but it definitely made me feel a little bit nervous. But something that has happened this week is I've been able to not worry about meeting any sort of upload deadline or anything. And I've been really diving into my next video project that I'm working on, which is so much fun. And I will tell you, I was gonna say, I can't even tell you. I'm literally going to tell you in a minute what I've been doing there. But it has been so much fun, and I've been thinking about it, and I kind of had the realization that maybe I've gone a little too far in the other direction. Or I don't know if I should say too far in the other direction. But the thing that happened was the last video, at the time I'm recording this, last video I made and shared was my Rodecaster Duo review, which I really loved. I had a ton of fun making that video, and part of that was because I got to just use the Rodecaster Duo on so many different things for like 6 or 7 weeks, and then decided, yeah, I think I want to make a video about it of my own volition, not because there's any agreement, anything like that. It was just, I wanted to make a video about this thing because I really like it. And especially the thing I'm most excited with the Rodecaster Duo is to finally have a very solid recommendation for most people where, I know a lot of times people are asking for some kind of audio gear, which is essentially everything a Rodecaster does. But like, I know the Rodecaster Pro is overkill, not because they don't deserve a high-end piece of equipment, but because it's literally like, it's more money and more equipment than they even want. More money than they want to spend, more equipment than they want. But you want that nice processing. You want those great preamps. You want all the computer connectivity and all that kind of stuff. And that's kind of was the only way to really get it with that level of quality. And the Duo takes all of that and then simplifies it and lowers the price a bit. At least in the US, it lowers the price. And that's awesome. So that made me really excited. I wanted to make that video. I was really happy with the video. So once it was done, I liked it no matter what. But even though I haven't been checking numbers a lot, I check numbers every couple of days at this point. Like I check in on my YouTube channel just to see that it's up and running. I don't pay a lot of attention to the numbers. I have collapsed YouTube's ranking system because they finally now let you collapse it so you don't have to even see it anymore. You can just see your most recent video. And, every couple of days I'll check in and see that. And that video seems to be doing quite well. Especially compared to some of the numbers I was seeing before, which is great. And, I guess this is where I started having a weird feeling in my stomach was I saw those numbers. Oh, that video's doing really well. That made me happy. And then I felt bad because that made me happy. Because something I had said, especially with YouTube's ranking system, was I didn't want that to dictate how I felt about what I made, for better or worse. So if I make a video that I love, and I upload it, and then YouTube says, oh, that's a 10 out of 10, which in the world of YouTube is a bad thing. I don't want to feel bad about the thing that I made because I still made it, and I still like it. I'm still happy with it. And just because this screen is telling me it's 10 out of 10 now, I might not like something as much as I did before. And the opposite is also true. I don't want to feel like, oh, this video is now I've been like verified that the video has been good because this screen says that it's a 1 out of 10. I didn't want that either. I didn't want to have any strong emotional reaction based on YouTube rankings. So fortunately, I haven't even seen the YouTube ranking thing, the X out of 10 ranking, since, I don't know, 2 months at this point. I haven't even looked at that. So that's great. I don't even know what videos are included in it. And I have no plans to ever look at that again. But it's hard not to look at a screen that has your video on it and see what the view count is and have a feeling about that one way or another. I don't really think there's any way around that. But it's made me feel really good that, like, oh, hey, that video is doing really well. That makes me happy. But it kind of, that feeling of being happy because of that was sort of sitting weird with me. But anyway, I decided, okay, now I'm going to work on my next video. This is not adhering to an upload schedule. I'm going to spend some time on this video, as much time as I want on it. And when it's done, it's done. And I'm currently working on it. It is not finished. I'm finally making the video about the Canon XL1, which is at this point, 25-year-old mini DV video camera. I think it's pretty much one of, if not the coolest cameras ever made. It was my dream camera as a kid, and I finally was able to buy one like 2 years ago on eBay. So it used to be $4,000, and I got a mint condition one for $400. And it has been so much fun to use that camera over the past few years for all kinds of, it's just been so much fun. And even though the image quality is like, in the video I'm working on, I'm literally taking old phones like an iPhone 4 and comparing the image quality. And the iPhone 4 like totally blows the XL1 out of the water. So image quality wise, it's not where even like an old phone is. But form factor and just sort of like the usability wise, it's like, I don't think it's kind of better than almost any camera that's out there now today. And that's sort of very interesting to me to see, like, here's a very dated camera in terms of image quality, but it's still so good, if not better than most things in terms of its actual usability, form factor, design, function, all that. So I just kind of wanted to create a video that explored this camera, what it means to me, how, like, I don't know, there's not really a point to it. It's a 25-year-old camera. It's not prescient. It's not something that is, timely by any means. But it's something I've been really interested in, and I feel like it's probably something other people are interested in too. And so, since there's no time constraints, I have been just letting this video take as much time as it needs to. And one thing that I've been wanting to do is really feel like I'm writing a video, not just quickly outlining something, but like sitting down and writing a video. So I've been loosely outlining the video for months at this point, but I spent a good solid couple of days just doing an outline, like a brief bullet point outline. And then the better part of a week actually trying to write that, I don't know how many thousands of words. I don't know if it's a script or an outline, whatever you would want to call it at this point, several thousand words to really like make this video make sense. Because I can sit there and talk about that camera all day. I could just, off the top of my head, because it means so much to me and I've spent time with it and it's been a part of my life for so many years, I could just talk about it. But I don't know if that's going to be as effective as I want to be. So writing something, having it make sense, like spending a week and a half on the outlining/writing process of a video was very different to me. And that is something that has been incredibly fun. And then getting to a point where it's like, okay, here's the shooting phases, which is there's the A-roll phase, which includes talking head. The video is broken into 3 parts. It's really more structured like a 5-paragraph essay if you look at it from the English teacher thing, because there's an intro and a conclusion, and there's 3 body segments. And those 3 main segments, I wanted to have slightly different shooting setups, slightly different A-roll setups for them. So they feel a little different. The setups communicate something slightly different visually. It has, just spending time to even think about stuff like that. It's not just like, I just need to sit here, turn on the camera, hit record, and try to record something. But like, what would be an effective way to visually communicate my thoughts about this? Even if it is me just sitting and talking at the camera, is there a way that's more effective than not? Should I be sitting? Should I be standing? What should be in the background? What aperture should I use? Is this something where I should be clearly in focus and the background is blurry? Do we need to see more stuff? Like all of those thoughts in a really purposeful way, more so than I normally do, has been really fun to dive into. And so the script outlined all that. And I got to a point where I was ready to film the A-roll talking head part. And I spent a couple of days doing that, not just one day or a part of day, but it took a couple of days to set up, the 3 different things, record it the way I wanted to, work on the audio, work on the lighting, double check all the footage after I had all the problems earlier, this podcast season. I was talking about having some issues with, this was almost one of the breaking points that led to the sabbatical, but issues with footage getting deleted and things going wrong and workflows, cracks forming in workflows. So making sure that stuff didn't happen again. And then getting to a point where it's like, okay, let's put together a rough cut. Here's a rough cut. Let's go through and be very meticulous about where we want B-roll clips, what B-roll we need, how is that going to work? Let's film the B-roll. Like, what do different things mean? I decided I wanted to incorporate anamorphic and spherical lenses, like normal lenses, along with the anamorphic lenses, but those look very different visually. And so in my mind, I'm trying to figure out and justify why should something look so different? And then I tried to solve that problem by having a clear purpose. Like, okay, the anamorphic shots, which are widescreen, they're kind of lens flare. Just because of the lenses I have, it's tough to get kind of close up, like a really close up thing of something. They kind of tend to be wider shots. So it's like, okay, anamorphic things are good when I just want to show something, set the stage, just sort of be very visual, essentially maintain visual interest. It was not just me sitting on screen talking the whole time. The regular lenses can be used when I really need to like expand on a detail. So if I say, hey, this button is really cool or this camera is really cool because there's a button on it that is an ND filter in the lens. Isn't it crazy that a lens from 1998 has a built-in ND filter? So being able to show a close-up of that button on the lens that is an ND filter is really important. And that can be a regular lens, not an anamorphic. So like, it's a small thing that I don't know if it's actually going to make sense or people are just going to be confused about why sometimes there's black bars and sometimes there's not. But it has been really fun to just sort of sit and just solve these problems, these creative problems, think about stuff. I feel like it's helping to develop a style. It's helping to give the video an identity more so than it would have had otherwise, especially if I was just trying to jam it into my other like filming schedule where I would have tried to, spend a day outlining, spend a day filming the A-roll, part of a day is filming the B-roll, day or two editing and be done with it. Like, I've spent more time on the outlining phase of this video than on most of the entire production process of a typical video in the past. Which again, not that there's anything wrong with doing a video quickly. That's a good skill to have, and sometimes it's all a video requires. But this is something I've been wanting to do for a long time, and I'm happy because I have felt like a failure for not doing this video for so long. I got the camera 2 years ago to make this video, and I just kept feeling so bad, like, oh, I'm putting off this idea that I really want to do. I'm building it up to something big in my mind that I don't know how to approach, and I feels like a task that I can't tackle. And now, because of the way I've been able to approach the process, because of the new like perspective on the work that I'm doing, I'm like really happy that I didn't make this video 2 years ago, because it wouldn't have been as good as it is 2 years ago. And I'm just so proud of it. So it's not done yet, so I'll knock on wood and make sure, maybe it'll never get finished, but I'm near finished with it. I actually have all the B-roll done. Most of it is edited in. Now I just need to do some remaining like B-roll, screen recordings, final polishing, and I would say the project's probably like 70% done at this point. So that has been really cool. Like, it has been so much fun to just spend day after day really like diving into the fine details of this. And I would love to do this with more ideas and more projects. And I still feel that guilt of, not having anything to share or upload. And so part of me has been able to scratch that itch by sort of sharing this process. So because there's more thought behind it, anytime I made a video in the past, there's thought behind it. And if you walked in the room while I was filming something and you asked questions, I'd be able to answer them. Like, why is the camera here? Why is the lighting this way? Why are you structuring the video this way? Obviously, I thought about that stuff and I'd be able to answer those questions. But it's interesting to not just have that in my brain, but to really sit there and like flesh it out. And so I've been sharing that on like Patreon and on the message board that I put together, almost like these blog posts that that explain the whole process, explain what's happening. I really like sharing screenshots so I can show like, look, here's the whole setup that I put together for this one talking headshot. And I can do just a picture with my phone that shows all the cameras and lights and everything together. And then I can show a screenshot from that so you can see, okay, this is what it looks like, how everything's set up. Here's what the result from that is. Okay, the next part is set up and it looks like this. Here's what the result of that looks like. And that has been really fun. Like sharing that process has kind of scratched that itch to share something, which typically I scratch that itch by uploading a video and making a video, but it's been kind of fun to do it this way instead. It's very, very different. And so as I'm working on this video, I can't help but wonder, like, what are people going to think about it? Is anyone going to like this? Is anyone going to care about a 25-year-old camera as much as I do? And I think that there are people out there who will, I hope. And I actually did have the thought, which was a nice thought, of I think this video could actually do pretty well. And wouldn't that be weird? Because the Rodecaster video is doing well. If this video happens to do well, then that means I'll have uploaded fewer videos, but the channel will have performed, quote unquote, performed well, better overall than it would have when I was, pushing out to hit this weekly upload schedule constantly. And then I felt really guilty for having that thought. I felt really guilty for making this thing and having fun with it and then thinking about how it's going to perform. I felt very guilty for thinking about like, oh, the channel could do better this way. And I kind of don't want to feel guilty for that. I don't want that to dictate how I approach creating stuff, those feelings. But I also feel like it is a little bit foolish to pretend like I don't care about how stuff performs at all either, because that's just not true. What I want to do is shift the focus away from being affected by numbers so that I can make sure that I can be in control of what I'm creating. The problem is, as I've been working to do that, now I've noticed that I start to feel like I'm doing something wrong when I look at numbers at all. And that doesn't feel like the answer either. I don't want to feel like I'm doing something wrong at all, because, there's nothing wrong with any of this stuff. So again, this isn't coaching advice or anything. These are just my thoughts that I want to share for my own benefit to get them out there, but also because I hope they are helpful. I hope there's something you can glean from it and cherry pick from it, even if what you realize is that you totally disagree with me and want to do things the opposite way. I think that's important as well, right? But ultimately, what I had to admit to myself was after spending time and effort creating a video or creating anything, I do want that thing to do well. I'm doing air quotes around do well, because I don't know what that means exactly. For me, a video doing well probably doesn't mean that it's like on the YouTube trending page, probably not bringing in a bunch of fame and fortune, but it's also not sitting there getting no views. It's not completely disinteresting everybody. Like it should some way be connecting with an audience. It's hopefully helping to build the channel, because that's a big part of allowing me to continue to do what I do. And then I started thinking about, there's nothing wrong with wanting to work on something like a video and then give it the best possible chance to succeed. Because really, like, trying to be honest with myself, the fact that I'm or you or anybody chooses to upload something publicly means that to at least some extent, we do want other people to see it. Right? Like that's the whole reason that it's being uploaded. It's one thing to say, and I think I've kind of touched on this a little bit. I know other people do that. Like, I create for myself, and it's not about numbers, and it's not about that stuff. But really, if you're just creating for yourself, if I'm just creating for myself, why not keep that finished video just on my computer? Why does anyone else ever need to see it if it's just for me? Can't I put it together, enjoy the whole process, be really proud of the end result, and then that's it? And then close the computer and go off and do something else? Why is it being uploaded publicly where other people can watch it? Well, I mean, I think there would be nothing wrong with making a video in a vacuum purely for the joy of making it. And sometimes for practicing or figuring out a technique, we've all done that, I'm sure. I know I have, like, hey, I want to figure out how to do this thing, so I'm going to put something together that isn't intended for anyone else to see. It's just me learning. But when you're when you're not doing that, when you're actually trying to make something with a purpose behind it, it almost seems like it would be a little crazy not to want anyone else to see it. Maybe that doesn't mean uploading it to YouTube, but, at least pulling aside like a friend or a family member and saying, hey, check this out. Like something like that, makes a little more sense, because audio and video are inherently communicative mediums, right? It's fun to share that stuff with others. It's the whole point of those things even existing is to be able to share video, to be able to share audio, to communicate these things, stuff that would have just been lost historically, for most of human history. If you weren't next to someone when they said something or saw something, you lost it. Maybe they could write it down, but it'd be hard to describe exactly. And now you can capture or show, you can illustrate a point even more effectively. You can capture someone's voice, exactly how they sound, exactly what they're saying, and share that exactly. Those are very inherently communicative mediums. And it's fun to do that, right? It's fun to explore ideas, to try new creative things, maybe even to try to import some knowledge and feedback, to impart, I meant some knowledge. Some words are hard. And to hear what other people have to say about that stuff that you shared, that is fun. The sharing part is fun. It can be a source of stress. And that's what I don't want it to be. I don't want it to be that source of stress that dictates what is being made. I want it to be that fun thing. And so it ends up, I'm sort of realizing there's these two extremes when it comes to how people share stuff, myself and just anybody, right? So if there's a spectrum of human beings making stuff to share, making videos to share, on one end is the person who makes something and just keeps it on their computer. They never even export it from Final Cut Pro. Nobody else has ever intended to see it. They just make a thing. There's that extreme. And then there's the other extreme, which is like the point where the YouTube analytics page is dictating what you create. The people who are so... It's like the editing for retention thing. It's realizing the video needs to be exactly this length, appeal to exactly this viewer. We need to say these words, like the cuts need to happen at this pace. Like the whole thing you're making, you want to talk about being in the passenger seat of something. You are not in the driver's seat of what you're making at all, because it's just what these platforms are telling you to make to get the highest numbers possible, the best retention, all that kind of stuff, whatever that might be. That's sort of the other extreme. Neither one is like, wrong, morally wrong or illegal or anything. So whichever one you do, it's fine. I feel like the place to be is probably more in the middle, right? Like I've always been a middle ground, like gray area person. Very rarely I have found in life is anything black and white. I guess unless you make a black and white movie. But even then though, if you make a black and white video, there's a lot of shades of gray in there, right? It's not just black and white. Maybe there's even 50 shades of gray in there. But I mean, this was a thing, like I remember in college, whenever I would have a class that had like a discussion, and there would always be an issue, like here's the issue we're discussing, and you'd have some people in the class who'd be on this side of the issue, some people on the other side of the issue. And after like a year or two, I realized that my place was always in the middle. Like I was always if you look at what they're saying and you look at what they're like, it's because very rarely in life are there things that are just black and white like that. So when it comes to those two extremes of not intending anyone else to see something you're making versus not even making what you want because it's so dictated by a platform and analytics, somewhere in the middle is probably a good place to be, because it's not realistic to act like you're not making something for other people to see, right? So as I was thinking about this and I was thinking about how I felt, I was starting to worry as I had been sharing my experiences and my thoughts with this stuff throughout this podcast season. I was starting to worry, I don't want to make anyone else feel bad if they're listening to what I'm saying, but then they're paying attention to a number in some way. If you start a YouTube channel, you're at 95 subscribers, the idea of getting to 100 is pretty exciting. Like if you upload a video and it's at 9,000 views, the idea of getting to 10,000 is pretty exciting. No, it's not going to change your life. No, it's not like it doesn't validate what you created or anything, but it's fun and it's exciting. And that's okay if you can contextualize that in a healthy way, I think, in a balanced and healthy way. And so I want to make sure that that I explored that side too. And when it comes to the numbers, it's almost like when people say to a negative comment, like, oh, just ignore the negative comments. Like, well, I'm a human being. I'm not capable of doing that, especially if I want to be able to appreciate the positive, kind ones. My brain can't just filter out emotions in that way. And so, it's one thing to not want to be controlled by numbers and have numbers dictate what you make, but it's another thing to pretend that you don't care at all and you're not focused on them at all, especially when you're doing something, you're working in a medium and working on platforms that are based around sharing stuff and mediums that are designed to be shared. And honestly, it's not just saying like, oh, there should be a balance in the middle. That's super easy. I figured it out, right? Like it's hard to maintain that balance. That is a difficult thing to do, but I think it's possible. I mean, a thing that I was thinking, I like Heather and I always use these. I mean, they're not mind games, but they're sort of like, I don't know, they're kind of mind games. Some of them came from my teaching days. One of them is the $1 million question. I think I've talked about this before. But if there's something difficult to do, if you ask yourself, like, if someone was going to give me $1 million to do this, could I do it? A lot of times the answer is yes. And that came from working with my students where, like, we would be, say we'd have to go on a field trip one day and we'd have to leave super early. Like they'd have to be at school at 5 a.m. on a Saturday for this trip. And I'd always have students like, oh, Mr. Buck, I'm going to like oversleep. I'm not going to be able to be here on time. And I would just ask them, if I would give you $1 million to be here at 5 a.m. tomorrow, would you be here? They'd be like, yeah, of course. Okay. So it's not an issue of possible or impossible. It's an issue of motivation, personal discipline, that kind of stuff. And that is a really good trick. Heather and I use it on ourselves all the time when there's, a project we're working on, especially if it's like a client related thing or just anything. Like if we were going to get $1 million to finish this today, could it get done today? Okay. Sometimes the answer is no. Like if someone was going to give you $1 million to walk from LA to New York City today, that's not going to happen. I cannot walk that far in a single day. So it doesn't matter how much money would be paid. And it's not even about like being money driven. But it's $1 million. It's a pretty good motivator for most people, I think. And so it's been sort of a helpful thing. And so something similar to that I was thinking to myself the other day was like, okay, imagine I made a video, say this XL1 video that I'm working on. I make that video and it's a video I really care about, that I am really happy with, and I'm having a ton of fun creating, and I'm really proud of, and I feel like it has been a chance to explore video creativity in a way that I haven't been able to for quite a while. Hugely positive experience all around. I love the video, incredibly proud of it. I think I'm going to be very proud of the finished result, at least I hope so. And then I want to put that online and let people see it because I want to share that with other people and see what they think. I don't want that to dictate how I feel about it. If that video doesn't get a lot of people watching it, I don't want to feel like, oh, I guess it was a really bad video. If 10 people watch it, it's a really great video that only 10 people watched. I hope that's not the case though. And so I was thinking, okay, if I'm creating this totally on my own terms and I want to share it with the world, imagine a situation, I don't know, maybe the YouTube algorithm went totally rogue. And what if I had this video and somebody told me, someone from YouTube called me and told me, okay, if you upload this video on a Tuesday, it's going to get 10 views. If you upload this video on a Wednesday, it's going to get 10,000 views. What day of the week would I upload the video? Wednesday. By admitting that to myself, I was admitting that I would prefer to have a higher number than a lower number. But then I was thinking, in that very strange scenario, is there anybody who would choose Tuesday? If all other things are equal, you got to make the video you wanted to make, you had the enjoyable experience you got to do. If it was literally upload on this day, get very few views, upload on this day, get a lot of views. Is there, like, seriously, is there anybody who would not choose the more view day? I can't think of a reason why. Because I just can't think of a reason why. Not even for an ego or a money thing, just for the idea of like, I worked on something really hard. I would like as many people as possible to see that thing. And that's not bad. That's not like that's not a failure, right? That's not that's what I mean when I think talk about giving everything you make the best chance. Like, I could make this video and work really hard on it, and then if I just let YouTube choose one of the weird auto-generated thumbnails that it makes, and the title is just like xl1video.mov, okay, I could do that, and it's probably not going to do very well because nobody's going to know what that video is about, and there's no description in it or anything. So of course I'm going to spend some time. Usually I end up spending, like, once a YouTube video is done, it's funny because you finish editing a video, you export it, and then you're like, oh, I'm done with the video. In the world of YouTube, at least for me, there's at least 90 minutes, if not 2 hours, of other stuff to do for the video. That doesn't even include the time spent making the thumbnail, which could be even more hours. But all of that stuff, like creating a thumbnail that you think is going to communicate your idea as effectively as possible, coming up with a title that works, adding in a description, maybe adding captions, maybe going through and linking to other videos, typing out a pinned comment to kind of add more context and more, all of that stuff. That's all. You could easily say like, oh, those are just tactics to like drive up engagement and whatever. But it's also stuff to give your video the thing you worked really hard on and put a lot of yourself into, a lot of your creative soul into. It's to give that the best chance. And the thing that I think I've learned the most over the past few months is those things aren't inherently bad or evil. It's about finding that balance where you're in the driver's seat, where you do get to create the thing that you want and on your terms for the reasons that you want, and you get to have the experience you want while you create it. And then when it comes time to sharing it with the world, there's really nothing wrong with going, okay, this is kind of what I was talking about last week. What does this thing need to have the best shot at, being successful? It's already a success because it exists, but yeah, I would like if I could choose to have 10,000 versus 10 people watch this, I would rather have 10,000 people watch it. Hey, if this thing could somehow end up working to help pay our mortgage next month, why not do that too? Like, if this can help grow a channel so that I can keep doing this thing that I love to do longer, why not have it do that too? And then in my mind, that's what I was thinking was, wow, what if spending as much time as I want on these videos, maybe it's, in the case of this XL1 video, it'll probably be total 3 weeks on the one video when all is said and done. I think that'll be about the time. So spend 3 weeks on this video. Maybe the next video takes 4 days. I don't know. Maybe another video takes whatever. The chances are, instead of uploading 4 videos a month like I have been for years, it'll probably be fewer than that. Probably, I don't know how many. Maybe 2, maybe 1, maybe 6. Whatever it happens to be. But imagine a situation where maybe I upload 2 videos a month instead of 4, but the channel ends up doing better. And that's just an objective thing. Like, there's more views coming in, there's more revenue coming in, there's more growth for the channel. Like, it's objectively doing better, which could totally happen. And what if that's happening because the stuff that I'm making isn't to meet a deadline? Isn't that almost more counterintuitive? Like, what if the stuff that I'm making, because I'm able to spend time on it and think about it, maybe, and I don't know, this is just a theory, but maybe it will be able to connect with an audience in a more meaningful way, in a bigger way, and then potentially, quote unquote, do better, which will help the channel do better. And then so by the numbers, when you do go and look at those numbers, like your bank account, you gotta go check your bank account balance. When I look at the YouTube analytic numbers every once in a while, dang, what if the channel's doing better with me actually sharing fewer videos? I don't say creating less, because I'm spending just as much time working on stuff. It's just in a different way. And that balance is really, I don't know, it's trying to find a way of creating on your own terms while also recognizing the fact that you are keeping an audience in mind. And creating for an audience is not a bad thing. Like, it can negatively affect you if all of those voices are in your head and that's affecting what you're making and how you're making it. That can be a bad thing. But there's absolutely nothing wrong with making something and thinking of who the people are that it's for. And Heather and I were just talking about this morning, and she said, yeah, if you make something with no one in mind, you're essentially making it for no one. Even if the person is you, if you decide like, hey, I want to make this for me, I want to make a video I would be really excited to watch. That sounds really selfish, but there's billions and billions of people on planet Earth. Some of them probably have the same sensibilities as you. So if you're making something that you would really like with yourself in mind, there's probably some other people out there who would connect with that for very similar reasons. And speaking of voices inside my head, this past week I saw a little like vignette from Tom DeLonge because Fender re-released his signature Stratocaster guitar, which is really cool. So like this resurgence of Blink-182 that's been happening lately in the early 2000s when Blink-182 was, at their height at that time, Tom DeLonge had a signature Fender Stratocasters, to his specs, these really cool colors. It's a very simple, basic guitar. I remember seeing them in Guitar Center all the time. And then, he ended up stopping playing Fender for a while. Blink-182 broke up. They discontinued the models, but they've sort of taken on this definitely a cult fan following over the years, and people even try to build their own and piece them together through parts. And just with this Blink-182 resurgence, and Tom DeLonge going back and playing some other Fender guitars, they've decided to re-release his original signature model of the guitars in the same colors, but even from what I can tell, they're actually even better. They have better hardware, better materials, better workmanship. So they're even a little bit better than the original ones were, which is usually, if you're someone who ever deals with reissues, that's usually not the case. The original is usually better. The reissues, usually not quite as good. This is as good or better in every instance, which is super cool. And so part of that launch was Fender released these little interviews with Tom DeLonge, and they were really interesting. Some of them were him just talking about his creative process, which I really like. There's a few, you can search Tom DeLonge interview or Tom DeLonge documentary on YouTube, and you'll find some cool stuff where there's a really cool hour-long Ernie Ball documentary that goes into his whole this is 6 years old, but it's really, really cool. I really love his approach to creativity in general. It's awesome. It's refreshing. He's a guy named Tom with a refreshing take on creativity. I like that. But in these Fender ones, these new ones, he's talking about their music and how he writes songs, and essentially why the signature guitar is so simple. It has one pickup and one knob. If you know anything about electric guitars, they usually have multiple pickups. They usually have switches and knobs to dial in different sounds. And he's like, no, it's one sound. You turn the knob up to make it loud, the end. And that's what the guitar is, and that's all that it's for. And he was even talking about when writing Blink-182 songs, he always calls them nursery rhymes, essentially. They're just really simple melodies. They're really basic. And sometimes they would try to do these much more complex things, but it ended up making sense to make it simpler and make it more accessible and break it down into its core elements. And I thought that was interesting because from just the pure artist perspective, it sounds like his impulse was to kind of go nuts and be, layers upon layers and complexity and that kind of music, which he's done stuff over the years that have those elements there. But when it came to this band, knowing, okay, this is Blink-182, this is the kind of music that people like from Blink-182, this is what they want from Blink-182. He even acknowledges in this little interview that there had been times in their career where maybe they should have been trying to just do what they want to do now, what people wanted them to do at their best. They're just sort of recognizing this band comes with expectations that they have helped create, and there's nothing necessarily wrong with meeting those expectations for your audience and doing that on your own terms. And if you want to do something outside that, there are other ways in the giant world that exists to go out and do that and to scratch those itches. And so one of the things that he says when it came to simplifying their music was that he worked at making it as accessible as possible. It's stripping it down, making it super simple, making it accessible. And then he said, being accessible is an art form. And I thought that was, I actually paused it and was like, Heather, you need to watch this and listen to this. I thought that was really cool. The idea that being accessible is an art form, not trying to necessarily be as layered as complex. And as I'm struggling over here thinking about, balancing the stuff that I want to create with what are expectations and what does it mean for something to do well, it's like, oh, I am making something, but yeah, I want it to be accessible. And that is a skill, and that is its own art form, is taking an idea that's in my weird, confused brain that doesn't make any sense to me and trying to distill that into something that other people can understand and connect with and maybe find interesting, or, take that idea and then do something of their own with it. And I don't know, I just thought that was I've never heard anyone talk about accessibility that way. And I thought that was just awesome. So it helped me to kind of confirm that all these feelings I've had after going through this process over the past few months, there's no right or wrong. It's just really the extent to which these things control and affect us that make the biggest difference. And ultimately, I don't want to feel guilty for wanting to give a video the best chance as possible for being successful, but I also really never ever want to feel like I'm in the passenger seat of what I'm creating. So as long as I'm in the driver's seat of what I'm creating, everything else kind of falls into place. And I think maybe that's the best way to look at it. Like, from a creative standpoint, put yourself in the driver's seat, and then everything else that you're prioritizing, that you're focused on, will find its proper place, because it's not going to be the driver's seat, because that's where you are. I hope that makes sense. I don't know. Did I spend 51 minutes not making sense? Maybe. Anyway, speaking of things that make a lot of sense, as we kind of wrap up this season, I did want to share with you something a little different that I'm going to be doing between the break between season 10 and season 11. Normally, when I take a break between seasons, which is something that has been hugely, it's been an awesome thing to do for my own creative, I don't know what you would call it, sanity, stamina. I don't know, but having the seasons and the breaks in between them has just been something that's really helped me to be able to do this podcast for 4.5 years. So, I've talked about that many times. And normally I just sort of take a break, and there's no episodes for, I don't know, sometimes a month. There's not really a specific designation. Usually the breaks are 3 to 5 weeks, historically has been what they are. This time I want to do something a little bit different. You might remember last year, maybe a little over a year ago, I created a podcast about my favorite genre of music, which is ska music. And that is where this right here, this music, the theme song for this show, that was originally the theme song for the ska podcast, but then I only made it to 6 episodes of that podcast, and I was like, I have this original composition song that, one of my friends wrote the song, one of my other friends recorded the song, and now it's just going to sit there, and I'm going to be using royalty-free music over here on this show? No. So I wanted to use that became the theme song for this podcast here. And the thing about doing 6 episodes of the ska podcast, that was interesting too, creatively, because it kind of felt like a failure. I had been wanting to do this thing where I was like, I just want to talk about this thing I'm super passionate about, which is ska music, and I've been passionate about it my whole life, and it's awesome. And I had so much fun. And after 6 episodes, I kind of talked about it all. There's probably more I could talk about, I'm sure, especially more time has passed. I'm sure, I could have conversations about it all day, but creating structured episodes that are hopefully interesting to listen to. After 6, I kind of covered it from everything I could do, and it sort of felt like a failure. But then I was like, no, that was really fun. I had so much fun making those. I think half the episodes have guests, half of them are just me. But the guests are great because everything is tied together in a cool way. One of them, my friend Mike, who actually recorded the instrumentals of that theme song for this show, he did this crazy research into the different waves of ska music and the history of ska. It's really, really fun, but it's just sort of been sitting there on its own, abandoned podcast feed and account. And it's kind of just dead because it's just over there. Nothing's getting added to it. It's also another Buzzsprout account that I have to maintain. So what I want to do is actually move that whole series to this podcast feed, so that way it can all be in one place, one library. Everything's there, ready to go. So what I'm going to be doing for the next 6 weeks after this, if you're listening to this when it comes out, the next 6 weeks upcoming will be an episode of the Ska Podcast. So I'm just going to be putting them on this feed, publishing them here. Some of you might have heard those before, but some of you might not have at all. And I just want to explain next week when you see something pop up where you're like, what is this thing about ska music? Why am I Why is there an episode of Tom's podcast called How Ska Changed My Life? Like, what is this? I want you to know what that is, and that it doesn't mean the show is permanently changed or anything. I just wanted to share something else that I've made that I'm really proud of, that just sort of it has been, I feel like it's almost neglecting. It's something I created that I care about that it almost feels neglected because it's just sort of off in its dark little dusty corner of the internet. And I want to kind of bring it into the spotlight a little bit, the ska light. Anyway, a little bit. So that's what I'm going to be doing, is moving that podcast over here. So for the next 6 weeks, you're going to get a new episode of that every Monday. So instead of just a break with nothing, you'll get something new if you want to listen to it. I know that's definitely not everybody's cup of tea. Trust me, I know that ska music is not the most popular thing in the world, but I really do think it's interesting, and I would genuinely encourage you to take a listen to some of those episodes because they're fun, they're interesting. Even if it's not, maybe you will discover that you actually really like it, but even if it's not your thing, I think if you're somebody who's ever been positively influenced or impacted by music or creativity or some kind of art form, I feel like there's a lot of stuff in there that you can identify with and connect with. And it's just, they're fun, easy to listen to episodes, and, it's low stakes. It's very, very fun. I think you'll enjoy it. And I thought that would be a lot more fun than just a couple weeks of radio silence. So we're going to have a ska podcast for the next 6 weeks, and then the premiere of season 11, which will be really, really fun. And I'm super excited for that as well. And geez, I think that's pretty much it. The last thing that I wanted to share before we wrap up season 10, can't believe there have been 10 of them, is since there is going to be a bit of a break, I don't want you to think that the lines of communication are closed. I don't want you to think that, there's no way to share anything now. If you have thoughts, if you have anything you want to share, please feel free to keep doing that. During the break, you can send an email to tom@enthusiasmproject.com. You can type out your email. You can attach a video file. You can attach an audio file if you want. If you want to do an easy way of leaving a voice message, you can go to himynameistom.com and then just scroll down just a little bit on that homepage, and you'll see a thing that says leave a message for the podcast. That will let you, whatever device you're on, whether it's your phone or a whole computer setup with a Rodecaster and the whole deal, whatever device you're on, you can just click a button right then, record a message, and send it in. Super easy, super simple. And then I can include those, or I'll be sure to save anything. If anything comes in between now and the premiere of season 11, I'll be sure to save it all, and we can share it and talk about it when the next season kicks off, which tentatively would be scheduled for October 9th, 2023. So if you're listening to this when it comes out, that would be, sounds like a long time, but it really isn't. It is crazy how time flies. So thank you so much for 10 seasons of a podcast, and especially this season, going through this whole creative re-evaluation of everything. I really appreciate all of the kindness and support that everybody has shown me, and I really got some super cool, encouraging messages and just notes from people, and it really, really did mean a lot to me. It made me feel a lot more comfortable in my own skin creatively, and that is absolutely awesome. And I hope you know how much I appreciate that and what a genuinely special gift that is for you to give to somebody. So thank you so much, and thank you for listening. And I can't wait to see where things go for season 11. So until then, I hope you have a safe, happy, healthy, fun rest of your day, and I'll see you next time.